Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start the meeting shortly. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you all here on this nice summer evening. It is our regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Thames Centre. The date is Monday, May the 25th, and it is 5 p.m. and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I am not been informed that there are any changes to the agenda, so I would look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as circulated. Deputy Mayor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? And that carries. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest from the members of council? Okay, we're seeing none. And there are 3 announcements, but not from me this time. I'll turn to Councillor Crockett for the first one.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to recognize the tree and property damage caused by the confirmed EF1 downburst in Dorchester and the EF1 tornado that moved through Ward 3 from Derwent to Mossley on the evening of May 19th. And thank you to everyone who helped with cleanup efforts and the Northern Tornadoes Project for their thorough investigation. RIP to my greenhouse.
Thank you. And then one from Councillor Lockie.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I may notice that quite a few of us are wearing red shirts today. And the purpose of the red shirts, it is in light of the National Accessibility Awareness Week, which is May 31st to June the 6th. And June 3rd is Red Shirt Day. So because we don't have a council meeting that week, we have all decided to wear red shirts in support.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Councillor Heeman had something as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to extend my congratulations to Gerald and Jean Johnson and Ron and Mary Johnson, the family partnership behind New View Farm and decades of community service in Thorndale being inducted to the Middlesex County Agriculture Hall of Fame on June 7th.
Congratulations to them. And the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that Sally Taylor is organizing a Dorchester Walk for Alzheimer's, and that's going to be held on Saturday, May the 30th from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. and just encouraging people to come out and help with the walk and donate to that worthy cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smyrer. There are no other delegations other than the Acorn, and I'm just going to move over to the lectern. So I just thought I would start the meeting out this way this night. At this time, it's important to note that there have been 2 previous meeting opportunities for the public to provide input, one on October the 20th of 2025 and one on February the 26th of 2026. In addition, residents have had further opportunities to submit their written submissions, all of which were received and considered by the applicant, council, and staff. The meetings in October and February were the primary opportunities for public comment. Therefore, tonight is for staff's presentation and for council to provide its recommendation to the county and not for additional public comments or questions. And just so that everyone has clear understanding of the process, I will remind everyone that draft plan consideration indicates the municipality and the county have reviewed the proposed layout of streets, lots, blocks, and parks as a concept in principle. It is a first step in the process. If the county approves a draft plan, it will do so with conditions. A list of technical, legal, and financial requirements the developer must satisfy. For example, engineering designs, servicing agreements, environmental studies, road access, permits, and securities. Before lot registration or construction can proceed, all conditions must be met before the next steps can happen. Staff have provided a copy of the proposed conditions for everyone's reference in the report. Finally, as I have previously stated, the public has had opportunities to weigh in with their thoughts ahead of tonight's council meeting, and the application is now in council's hands. I'm certain that I don't have to remind those who are in attendance, but just in case, I would ask all that are here in the chambers this evening, please maintain respectful decorum to ensure a safe and orderly meeting. I ask that you please refrain from interruptions, personal attacks, chants, or disruptive signage. Anyone who becomes disruptive may be asked to leave. I will now ask the applicant to present their amended application, after which staff will present their analysis. Okay. I'm going to turn it over now to our planners. So we'll begin with a presentation from Doug Terry Holmes for about a 5-minute period, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I'm just waiting. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. So we're here today for the draft plan of subdivision for Acorn Valley. Pressing buttons. Just as a quick refresher, so it is located at the east end of Harris Road, south of Hamilton Road, and north and south of the Christie Drive extension. So we have not changed the number of units from our proposed, previously presented plans, but we have clarified the count of the units and which ones will be done in each phase. So in the first phase, there's 71 single detached and 30 semi-detached for 101 total units. Plus there's also a high density block, which the request in the OPA is for up to 387 units. Second phase is for 26 units for single family. And then the third phase of the initial draft plan is for 50 single detached, 16 semi-detached, and 21 townhouse units. So for a total of 214 for the first draft plan approval and a total of 601 if we were to build out to the full density on the multifamily block. So this is just showing where the lots are throughout the entire plan. We have basically there is a high density block in the southeast of the or southwest of the lands, and the remainder would be low density forms of townhouses and semi-detached, with semi-detached and singles being located along Christie Drive extension, and the townhouses being on the westernmost north-south road being proposed. So since the previous applications or public meetings were held, we have revised our official plan amendment to reduce this number of stories to 4 stories on the multifamily block. This was previously at 6 stories. 4 stories is in line with the council approved, but under appeal OP. And then we have also reduced the density from 100 units per hectare down to 95. And this is consistent with the R3 zoning, which is proposed through the zoning amendment being heard at a later date. So the numbers add up to, based on lot area, that's what we could get. So one of the concerns that we did here was that for the traffic management, part of it being Christie Drive could be a raceway. And so there is 2 roundabouts that were added from our initial submission. From a safety perspective, it does need to connect into the existing Christie Drive. And from a access perspective, to have 2 accesses to the subdivision, it would need to connect out to Harris Road. And then the future development to the south, we have looked at how we can connect the roads down to the south to get out to Harris Road. as well as potentially through future acquisitions, if possible, out to Mill Road. It is possible, but all these options are outside of the settlement boundaries. So at this time, we can't move forward with bringing roads into there. And another concern was the sanitary alignment. So through the draft plan conditions, we will work with the municipality on choosing options. Our preferred option, which we've stated many times, is option 2, alignment. And it's just, we need to make sure we get the math right for everybody so that decisions can be made. But we are working with the municipality, and ultimately the municipality is a decision maker on this servicing alternative, since it will eventually be their responsibility. And that is all we have. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Any questions from council at this point before we go to the planning report from Ms. Besh? Councillor Crockett?
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have 3 questions for you, Tracy and team. In regards to the traffic management, I appreciate that you've added some considerations to the dragway of the proposed Christie Drive. I was just wondering if there was additional designs being considered to minimize the cut-through traffic through the established adjacent neighborhoods, otherwise known as Tyner.
At this time, we have not looked at that. Those are municipal roads. That is something that through the draft plan conditions could be worked through if there is a concern. Ultimately, first phase of the subdivision, the block is getting registered. That doesn't mean it's getting built. So the first phase is really 101 units. So it's not too much traffic. And I believe there's actually a condition in there to address traffic, update traffic studies as we go through the different phases.
Thank you for that. My second question is in regards to the consideration for commercial zoning on the ground level of the high density block.
That is still within the official plan. We are still requesting that. We don't know. We're trying to keep it flexible. Ultimately, we don't know if it will actually go through or be able to be put in, but keeping the flexibility there is our preference.
Thank you. And my final question pertains to the density numbers. I do just want to first thank you for reducing the height of your proposed high density structure. I think 4 levels, 4 stories better aligns with the current landscape. I still do have some concerns around the proposed 95 units per hectare. So I was wondering whether you could share what a feasibility threshold would be if that were to be reduced further.
Don't know that number off the top of my head, but the way we derived at that was based on the existing permissions in the R3 zone for apartments, which permits, I believe the first 4 units need, I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but there was a breakdown in one of my previous letters on when we amended it on how we came to that number.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lucky?
Through your worship. So obviously the Harry Small Trail is a beloved and very, very important to the people in this community. Will there be any period of time where they will not have a trail? So in between the time that the current one has to be deconstructed and the new one is built?
So we are working through that that would be a part of the draft plan conditions, but there will be a period of time when it won't be safe for people to be on it. We can do as much work as we can outside of the area, but there will be a transition period where there won't be able to, just from a safety perspective of having people where heavy machinery are working.
So how length of a period of time would be, and can we minimize it so that we don't go throughout the summer months when people want to use the trail?
I don't know the timing right now. Again, we can look at construction that will come through the construction schedules, but we would look to try to accommodate, outside of peak summer season.
Okay.
Anyone else from council before we move to Ms. Besh's report? Councillor Heman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming tonight and presenting your your revisions and your final proposal. I'm just curious with respect to some of the environmental concerns that were raised. I understand that the mitigation plans are going to be forthcoming as like more part of the actual final agreement. Is that kind of accurate, and that there does need to be up refreshers of the study with respect to certain migratory bird species habitats and whatnot?
So for the with respect directly to the migratory birds, we are working through the permitting process at the province. The report was primarily done in studies in 2019, but we also did updates and revisited the site in 2022 and 2024. And prior to starting work, we can have somebody go out and make sure the species are still not on site, that it is just, I know there was habitat for red-headed woodpeckers, so we would just go check to make sure that they are not out actively breeding on the site. And we are going through all the permitting and required processes, and any tree cutting, anything would be done outside of the migratory and breeding season. So any major tree cutting is not going to be done until the fall this year at the earliest. And all the other studies will be updated as part of the permits we require from the municipality as well as from the Conservation Authority.
I think like Bill 5 limits the requirement to actually register a plan for the province, and the Migratory Bird Act is federal and it has federal requirements. So those are two different things.
We are aware of the federal requirements, so we will be in compliance with all levels of requirements if there's permits at federal, provincial, and local levels.
Yeah. And how are you going to refresh the ground nesting bird study when that nesting window's already been completed?
The nesting window is throughout the summer. We're not allowed to touch anything from March 31st to October 31st because that's nesting and breeding season. So it's not just
Yeah.
but the birds will be on site still, and you can still see if they are ground nesting.
Okay. And then do you plan on doing a cavity nesting study because of the chimney swifts and other cavity nesting species that were identified whose habitats need to be preserved for a 2-year period after identification under the Migratory Birds Act?
We will be looking into that through the updates of our studies.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else from council, I will then ask Erin Besh to come forward with her planning report. Is there something?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to present staff's evaluation of the Acorn Valley applications and provide council with an opportunity to consider a recommendation to the County of Middlesex with regards to the proposed draft plan of subdivision and associated official plan amendment. The County of Middlesex is the approval authority for plans of subdivision and official plan amendments. As part of that process, statutory public meetings were held on October 20th of last year, as well as February 26th of this year, to receive comments from the public, council, and reviewing agencies. The county is now seeking the municipality's position on the application through a resolution of council. The proposal consists of a residential subdivision containing single detached, semis, townhouse blocks, and one high-density residential block located primarily south of Christie Drive. The subdivision also includes parkland, stormwater infrastructure, pedestrian connections, open space areas, and the relocation of the Harry Small Trail. To support the high-density block, an official plan amendment has been requested. As Tracy has discussed this evening, they have amended as per their original application. And so my evaluation in my report speaks to the amendment rather than what the original application was. The lands are currently zoned future development, which does not permit the proposed residential development. However, an amendment has also been received to establish the residential open space, environmental protection, and institutional zoning necessary to implement this subdivision. Detailed zoning provisions are outlined within my report and will be brought to council for a decision at a future meeting. Throughout the review process, comments were received from various agencies and municipal departments, including the UTRCA, Middlesex County, utility providers, and emergency services and municipal staff. All relevant comments have either been addressed through revisions to the plan or incorporated into the recommended draft plan conditions. The applicant has also submitted a number of technical studies in support of the applications, including traffic, servicing, stormwater, environmental, geotechnical, and archaeological reports. These materials were peer reviewed on behalf of the municipality, and while some detailed matters remain outstanding, staff and the municipality's peer reviewers are satisfied that they can be addressed through draft plan conditions and future detailed design. So under the Planning Act, council decisions are required to be consistent with the provincial planning statement and conform to the county and local official plans. Staff are satisfied that the proposal meets those requirements, particularly policies related to settlement area growth, housing choice, infrastructure efficiency, and compact development. Through the public consultation process, the primary concerns raised related to density and compatibility. The primary concerns that were raised were related to density and compatibility, traffic and pedestrian safety, environmental impacts, the trail system, and servicing. And I will briefly address each of those matters for you. Beginning with compatibility, residents expressed concerns regarding the relationship between the proposed subdivision and the existing Tyner subdivision. Staff carefully considered these concerns throughout this review process. The subdivision has been designed so that lower density housing is located adjacent to the existing neighborhood, while medium and high density forms are directed more internally and towards the western portion of the site. Staff are satisfied that this creates an appropriate transition in density and built form. Turning now to traffic and pedestrian safety, the peer-reviewed traffic impact assessment concluded that the surrounding road network can accommodate the proposed development and that the internal street system is capable of handling projected traffic volumes as well. Residents raised concerns regarding pedestrian safety and shortcutting traffic within the existing subdivision. In response, the proposed design includes traffic calming measures, including outs along Christie Drive. The applicant has also agreed to a draft plan condition requiring a future roadway safety impact study if warranted as development progresses through future phases. So I do want to note that the traffic impact assessment is required to be amended or reviewed at each phase of development. And through that process, we will be made aware of changes in traffic and road safety. And if warranted, we will require them to undergo the road safety impact study. And that's one of the conditions that we've amended in our list tonight. Residents also requested that the Wheeler Ave and Christie Drive connection be removed to limit traffic entering the existing subdivision, and we have reviewed this request and determined that maintaining connectivity is important to achieving a functional and interconnected road network, which is also supported by planning policy. With respect to environmental considerations, concerns were raised regarding nearby wetlands, natural heritage features, and species at risk. The proposal has been supported by the environmental impact study reviewed by both the municipality's peer reviewers as well as the Conservation Authority. The study includes mitigation measures and recommendations that are secured through the draft plan conditions and future detailed design work. Additional conditions have been included respecting erosion control, wetland compensation monitoring, and restoration measures associated with the road extension. Staff are satisfied that the proposal can proceed without unacceptable impacts on adjacent natural heritage features or ecological functions if these conditions are met. I would also like to briefly address the Harry Small Trail. The existing trail is currently located within the unopened portion of Christie Drive and will need to be relocated to accommodate the road extension. The proposed trail will be relocated north of Christie Drive behind the proposed residential lots and is intended to function as a landscaped multi-use pathway supporting walking, cycling, and recreation. The long-term design also incorporates stormwater functionality and naturalization through the planting of native vegetation. Staff recognize the importance of this trail to the community and have included conditions, including requiring a detailed trail plan addressing matters such as grading, maintenance, environmental impacts, trail materials, and long-term ownership, all subject to review by the municipality and the Conservation Authority. With respect to servicing, staff are satisfied that the municipal infrastructure can adequately accommodate the proposed development. Residents have expressed preferences regarding the sanitary service alignment. However, both servicing options remain technically feasible, and the final alignment will be determined through detailed engineering review and future agreements. Remaining technical matters such as servicing, grading, stormwater management, landscaping, and detailed design are proposed to be addressed through draft plan conditions and future subdivision agreement, which is standard practice for developments of this scale. The proposed official plan amendment specifically relates to permitting the high-density residential block. Staff are satisfied that the amendment is appropriate. I won't go through my analysis that I put together in my report. However, we find that is consistent with the broader policy framework, encouraging housing choices, efficient development, and compact growth within settlement areas. Similarly, staff are satisfied that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment meets the applicable policy criteria. However, for further consideration of the zoning details will return to council at a future meeting. So in conclusion, staff are satisfied that the proposed applications represent good land use planning, are consistent with provincial policy, and conform to the county and municipal official plans. Therefore, my recommendation this evening there's 4 recommendations. The first is that I recommend that the council recommend the issuance of draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex in regard to the plan of subdivision and subject to the conditions attached to my report, and that the application for official plan amendment be adopted and forwarded to the county for consideration approval as well, and that the implementing bylaw for the official plan amendment be considered as included in the bylaw portion of the agenda, and that application, the zoning bylaw amendment application be brought back to council for further consideration upon granting of draft plan approval and the official plan amendment both by the County of Middlesex. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erin. I will now turn it over to council for any questions that they might have. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank Erin for an extremely comprehensive and informative report that she put together for us this evening. Ahead of going into questions from the rest of council, I just wanted to acknowledge the significant community interest and feedback this application has generated over the past several months. Those conversations have raised important concerns around traffic density, servicing, environmental considerations, trails, and how this development could fit into Dorchester's future. The Acorn Valley lands have been identified for future development for over 20 years and fall within Dorchester's settlement boundary, which is intended to direct growth into communities while protecting agricultural land outside of them. Although the lands have continued to be farmed, they have not been within active agricultural protection classifications for many years. It is also important to remember that many of the same concerns around change have been raised during previous periods of growth in Dorchester. Many of the neighborhoods people value today were once considered major changes themselves. I think that many residents right now are feeling that the reality of several growth pressures seeming to arrive all at once instead of gradually over time. At the same time, municipalities are working within provincial framework that continues to push housing growth and faster approvals, which can limit how much control local governments have over the pace of change itself. This doesn't mean local concerns or community character should be ignored. It means that we need to be thoughtful about how growth is planned and integrated moving forward. Developments of this scale also involve ongoing review, negotiation, and compromise, and realistically, no side walks away with everything they want. Applications like this always bring differing opinions, but I think the most important thing is continuing to work through those discussions thoughtfully and to focusing on long-term outcomes for Thames Center as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Did you have any questions you wanted to follow up with at this point?
Oh, I have lots of questions, but someone else can go first.
Okay. Anyone else from council who might have a question on the siding application or a comment? Daniel?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. I'll go first. So, so my concern is about the units per hectare. So, with respect to the official plan amendment for 27, it actually has a maximum of 50. And I'm concerned that 95 is not even really in the ballpark. So I would like to recommend that 50 be the maximum for residential units per hectare. And then I do have a question, and I don't know if this will be for the planner or for the applicant, just regarding in number 4 in the draft plan, it references a new cemetery. So I was wondering if I could get clarification on why we need a new cemetery.
Do you want to take that, Erin, or would you rather, is Doug Terry Holmes to address it? I know it's something that we've talked about before, but go ahead. Tracy, are you taking this one then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the new cemetery, there's 2 blocks with that, which is to accommodate some indigenous remains which were found through the archaeological. So we have designed the subdivision to preserve and protect.
Yeah, I was a little puzzled when I saw that myself. The institutional is not necessarily something we usually consider, but it is for archaeological finds. Okay. Anything else? from
Oh, I'll let
another
somebody
one?
else go ahead.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Thank you. And these aren't questions for the planner. These are our comments. And there's some similarities between what Councillor Crockett has indicated and what I'm going to say. But first of all, I just want to thank the residents for your engagement in this process. I know that the planning act itself and the planning process is really difficult to maneuver within. But I did appreciate your willingness to learn about the process and to actively participate in that. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I also wanted to point out, similar to what Councillor Crockett said, that municipalities, we're not autonomous. Like we are creatures of the province, and the province has made it really crystal clear what the mandate is. And that is that municipalities need to build houses. Not only do we need to build houses, but the province is looking for density as well. And we're not able to opt out of that, unfortunately, whether we want to or not. And I think in terms of the intensification of the density, I think that does serve 2 purposes. I think it helps us to grow within our existing growth boundary without having to expand the growth boundary, because I don't think that any of us want to see good farmland being eaten up again by new development. So it does that. And I also think it makes our services, such as water and sewer, a bit more effective and efficient, because we always hear about the fact that, you know, water and wastewater prices are high. So sometimes density can help with some of those costs. I also wanted just to kind of go back a few years, and I just want to say I do understand the concerns that the residents have, because the exact same thing happened in a farmer's field across from my home on Barron Ave. It was about 40 years ago that development started. Hundreds of houses contemplated for that. That was 40 years ago, and they're still building, right? So these developments, they don't happen overnight. It does take time. And there was some concern with the density in terms of the terrace, but also the Shoppers Drug Mart too, that it's kind of seemed to be kind of out of place. But as you can see, there's development plans to kind of build around it and enhance that area. So, and also, did the traffic increase? Absolutely, it did. Right. I think we're seeing traffic increase on most of our roadways within Thames Center. But as the development has occurred, there's been a slow evolution in terms of upgrading Byron Ave. We now have sidewalks, we now have bike lanes. So those things will happen, but it's not going to happen overnight or before the development occurs. I think that as residents, you clearly conveyed your concerns, and I've seen the developer take those into consideration, and they've changed the proposal to reduce the number of stories from 6 to 4, and to also reduce the density. Council's role really is to make decisions for the entire community. And I do think that Thames Center does need a variety of housing stock. both for our existing residents to age in place and for our children to come back and live in Thames Center. I feel fortunate that I have a home. I can afford a home. To be honest, if I was my children's age, I don't think I could afford a home today. Right? So I think that this plan will allow for those seniors to age in place and hopefully our children to come back to Thames Center. Because I've seen what when people can't age in place and they have to move to another community, that physical disconnect, that's really difficult for our residents. And a lot of our residents have spent majority of their time in Thames Center. And I think we should do our best to make sure that they stay here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smyberg. Is there anyone else from council who would like to make a comment or ask a question? Councillor Heeman?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I do think there's been a lot of thoughtful comments already. And I'm just going to say what I'm thinking. This is not, I do have some, I've heard some suggestions in terms of edits to the conditions. And so I would like to circle back to that when I'm done. But I want to explain how we got to this point because I think it's relevant, and we've talked about the province and stuff. But the reality is there are. So I actually got into the provincial policy statement with a fine-tooth comb, and what this decision hinges on is whether they are capable of addressing the issues that have been identified, not that the issues are solved. And that is the burden of proof on which this decision has to be measured. I don't think that's satisfactory as a resident, as an individual, but I think it's important to keep in mind and that this is not a final decision if and when the decision happens. That this is an ongoing piece of work, that there is a lot of homework yet to be achieved. And I think what this is doing is giving Doug Terry the confidence that, you know, they're not just wasting their time and wasting money. And I think that's a fair assumption, but I think equally, we as a community have a fair assumption that our concerns are going to be taken in good faith and worked on. And I think that, you know, we are starting to get closer to the middle, but I say all of this not to give anybody here a hall pass, but to say that this work is not done past this meeting. So again, the environmental studies and the mitigation plans, not tabled. So next time this comes up, that better be part of the discussion, right? And I don't think we should build a road until we actually know how we're dealing with our legal responsibilities. Part of the changes is that the province made natural heritage municipal. That's why I spent so much time on it. That's why we got an environmental engineers report. And I think that there's still a lot of work to be done on that. There are provincial changes, but the reason they repealed some of the requirements for species at risk, because there's federal species at risk requirements. And there's federal migratory bird species requirements. And we have no plan at this time on how we're going to meet those. So I don't believe that we should be putting shovels in the ground until we make sure that we as a community and as a municipality and as developers are not liable for damage to our environment. I think that's a reasonable assumption, and I think that has yet to be forthcoming. So that's just one example. And again, there's the point that, you know, it's not in the urban boundary, the southern route. The province made it that any landowner adjacent to an urban boundary can apply for an amendment to be included in the urban boundary with preliminary work, similar to the amount of studies that, if not less, than what have been brought forth here today. So it is within the power of the people in this room to undertake that exercise, right? But that has to be led by the landowner. And then it can be considered just like this proposal is being considered. I say that because again, Bill 5 doesn't remove all of the natural species protections. They have to be balanced with economic impact. And part of that is still alternatives, alternative options. And now that is not, you're not required to register a mitigation plan unless there are complaints to the province. And then they will render a decision on the net balance of what they believe the economic benefit is and the environmental impact. So I say this because you as a community no longer have the ability to lodge or act as in joiner status at the tribunal, the provincial land tribunal. The only people who can do that are authorities like the county, like the conservation authority, like the municipality. But these are other areas that are available to the community to make sure that your voice is heard. So I hope that explained a little bit. I know it's very convoluted, but it does give you, the community, power beyond this room, beyond today. And I hope that that matters.
Thank you, Councillor Heyman. Anyone else? Councillor Lucky.
Yeah, through your worship. So I just want to recognize, the work of the people in the public. Many of them are here tonight or listening. I appreciate your attendance at our meetings, your emails, our personal meetings I've had with people, your petitions. You ask the tough questions and do an excellent job at communicating the needs of the community. And that has really helped us to ask, the good questions when it comes to this development. So really appreciate what you have done for us.
Councillor Crockett.
Thanks, Mayor. I've chunked my questions under various topics. So if I may, I'm going to start on some traffic questions. I'm hoping that our planner can expand on the process of the Christie Drive extension, because I'm just not fully satisfied with the proposal of the location going through the wetlands. And I'm wondering if you can further kind of take us through what the process is for extending predetermined roadway.
So through you, through the mayor to Councillor Crockett, the extension of Christie to the west is on a municipal road allowance. It's in the original town plan for the town of Dorchester, village of Dorchester. So that's the beginning point for looking at that location. Looking at that location, it's not the ideal site because of the wetland that's at the Harris Road part of it. Early in, and these applications have their origin at an initial pre-consultation where all of these factors are identified. And early on, the pre-consultation notes indicate that the Conservation Authority raised the fact that if there was going to have to be a connection there, it was going to require a permit from the Conservation Authority. And through the process, I understand that other alternatives were looked at to get a connection to Harris in that area, but it's very constrained on both sides of the road allowance and the road allowance. So right where Harry Small Trail hits Harris is where that current road allowance is. So in the end of the day, the work has been done by the applicant to indicate that the impact can be mitigated. There is still some work to do to complete the dotting of the I's and crossings of the T's to complete that report to the satisfaction of getting the permits. But the permitting granting authorities have indicated that their main issues have been flagged and they just require the confirmation through a final detailed design submission. So that's how that location was identified. It is an original road allowance, but that doesn't on its own make it the predetermined location. But there are limited locations. There are no other locations in the urban growth boundary to get that connection out to Harris. And the moment that the project uses that connection where it is, which has been selected and been worked on as the proposed connection and the mitigation has shown it's been done, then all of the traffic studies and analysis have been based on that point. So to move it now really goes against that early pre-consultation and those early results. And that's why it's very complicated to say now, well, perhaps we should move it south. The south, going south is complicated because it's not in the urban growth boundary. And you have to go a long ways south before you get out of the wetland. And by going that far south, you're going to create major traffic problems in the existing subdivision because people will go north rather, if they can't go west to get out, they will then go north and they will go through Tyner. So this is the process that, as I understand it, that the applicant has gone through. I think as staff, and I know council's got some discomfort with that spot, but that is the limited place for that connection. And now everyone's moved to mitigation mode.
Thank you, Mr. Rick. Did you have further questions, Councillor Crockett?
I've got two more.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just on traffic. I got more after that. So my second question regarding traffic is, I think residents who live in Tyner Estates specifically, but also us that hear the comments of kind of the everyday usage of the roads in that area, still feel that there's some disconnect between the technical traffic modeling done in the TIA and what the perceived or real world impacts will be. And I'm wondering if you can just kind of take us through the build out of the TIA and then specifically reference condition 28, where it includes, Aaron, I know you mentioned this in your statement, but where it includes the potential for review of a road safety impact and how that can be assessed for perhaps now, as well as future phases.
So through the mayor, I think that question is best answered by the applicant. So you get it directly from the applicant, and with your blessing, I would direct that one. I would suggest that Doug Terry's team be asked to answer.
I can speak to that one. Through you, Mayor. In response to the traffic inquiry, so the traffic study is generated based on they go out and take field records of existing traffic counts when they start the study. And then from there, they apply a growth projection out, looking out to a number of years. I believe in this case, they looked out to at least 2030. That study sets a basis for looking at the capacity of all the roads. And that's mainly based off of peak traffic in the morning and in the afternoons. And that's set out based on the ITE Institute of Transportation Engineers methodology for looking at traffic studies. The condition 28 that's been included in the draft plan conditions is that as each phase develops, we'll have to work with staff to determine if an update to the traffic study is needed based on traffic being experienced at that time. And the road safety impact looks at features such as traffic calming measures, intersection controls like stop signs or stoplights or things of that nature, turning movements and things of that effect that intertwine with pedestrian and cycling traffic to make sure that there are no safety concerns.
Thanks, Alex. Does that answer the question?
Half of it. I was just wondering if our planner could just comment on the use of the road safety impact assessments for future phases, or the condition 28.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So this is somewhat of a new term to me. I'm not quite sure what all entails through the road safety impact study. Certainly Alex is originally the engineer who made the recommendation and the concession to add some comfortability for council to this condition. Again, I perhaps
Yeah, sorry, Aaron.
Sorry.
Perhaps I shouldn't have directed it to you. I was just wondering if we could expand on what that means and how that will be utilized for future phases.
Um, Our understanding of working with staff would be that if a future update was required and if it flagged that there was a need for some additional measures, whatever they may be, speed bumps or stop sign or something of that nature, that we would have to work with staff to figure out how that would actually be implemented in on-site as each phase develops.
Thank you. And my final question, not to convolute the conversation, but I think perhaps most of the people in this room are likely looking ahead for when this development comes online. And I was just curious on what the triggers are for future road improvements should they be required by a new development coming online. Perhaps this
Are
is
you
Jared, sorry.
directing that to staff or?
Yes.
Okay.
Through excuse me, through your worship. Yeah, there's usually three prompts or three triggers that would trigger that. One is safety or accessibility concerns. That'd be followed by a study showing that there are those safety concerns, pedestrian, accessibility, etc. Second one is asset life cycle events. For example, if we're resurfacing the road, that'd be a perfect time to install say sidewalks, streetlights, whatnot too. Third one is citizen petition. The citizens of those streets there could petition for streetlights, sidewalks, whatnot, and be a local improvement. That each property be assessed, an amount, for that cost there. But those are the three triggers that would trigger that there.
Thank you. That concludes my traffic portion for right now.
Okay. Councillor Heeman next.
Thank you, Worship. And I have a question to our planners. I was just wondering, during your discussion, you talked about how this would, again, these are triggers, but a lot of these triggers are retroactive, right? And so I think a lot of weight lands on this clause if necessary. So I was wondering, I thought I heard you might clarify that it's that there is a commitment to doing these on a phase by phase basis. And if so, can we make sure that it says that these are required and that we have, the completion of a block being the trigger for that process?
Through the mayor, usually we include the wording if necessary to give some flexibility. So for phase one, the traffic assessment has been completed pretty much for that number of dwellings that are being proposed at this time. So, I think your question is like, you would like to see an amendment to the wording that the road safety study be required at every phase rather than.
Yeah, I believe so, because I think that, there is a significant amount of on lack of clarity on what some of these targets, what the final targets may be. And I don't mean that to disparage what we have tonight. I'm just acknowledging there are future development blocks that we don't have at this time the proposals for. And as we're aware, the framework around density targets can change radically from, higher levels of government that may, impact future site plans. So, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Crockett.
Sorry, if I may, so the condition that references the road safety impact is number 28, and it currently reads that updates to the traffic impact assessment are provided on a phase-by-phase basis, including the potential for a review of road safety impact as determined by the municipality and any outcome to be completed by the developer. I would second, because I'll give Tom the credit for moving, if we could just remove the language of the potential and have it read, including a review of road safety impact as determined by the municipality. Is that okay with you?
So just reminded by the clerk that these are recommendations that you would be making to the county
So
to consider.
I would recommend we remove the 3 words, the potential for, and then just have it read, including a review of. Can I change that in condition?
Are we able to change? I'm going to turn this over to the CAO.
To the mayor, these are things that have been negotiated with the developers, so I think it'd be worth being able to get their feedback and input on whether or not they would be comfortable. And I think even in your reading, that helped to clarify in terms of what Councillor Heeman was saying. He's looking to ensure that work is done on a phase by phase basis. That's how this sentence reads to me, right? The traffic impact assessment is done on a phase by phase basis, so that will happen at every phase. But the potential for a safety review based on that assessment, the assessment is what is going to trigger that road safety impact. So like that, just to make sure we're clear on what that condition entails. So if the assessment, so I guess I would go back to perhaps the engineer to clarify, given it's their, offer. What would that look like for them in terms of when would you expect to not have to do a road safety impact once you've got your traffic impact assessment completed on each phase, and when would you?
Do you want to take that, Alex?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, removing the wording wouldn't be in opposition for us to adjust that. We have generated the understanding with staff that the traffic impact update, because we've done the study for this first phase that's being developed here, it would be with the second phase of development that we would do the traffic impact assessment and road safety review.
Councillor Heeman, you have something to add?
Yes, and thank you to everyone in this discussion on this. And I think it's important to have these embedded, because when we're talking about civil engineering and road design, there are a number of smart features, as you indicated, that, you kind of got to get them right from the beginning, So I think that having that trigger would serve all parties.
So this is a motion?
I was going to say, well, it's technically your motion, so you get to talk.
So I would make the motion, but otherwise I think like through our clerk, it may make sense to do an omnibus of potential edits or minor revisions, like versus like I'd rather have the discussion and we can look at all these things in fulsomeness and holistically, so that we're not doing death by 1,000 cuts with like a bunch of motions. Have like one final discussion, and that way we reach consensus.
So if I understand you correctly, through all of the conditions that are in there, if we find something else, add it to the same. Is that what you're talking?
I would defer to the clerk on their preferred process for orderly conduct, or orderly records, but
Okay.
that would be my thought.
Really, it's up to you at this point, though. We do have a mover and a seconder, which mean the motion is on the floor. If you'd like to withdraw your motion at this time and put it all together, I can keep track. It's your choice.
Councillor Crockett?
Yeah, I think it would actually make sense to do them as we go. And since there's a motion on the floor, first, seconded, if we could move forward with that, with the thank you to Alex for agreeing that he's okay with the wording change.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, then. So,
I will withdraw on that basis.
no, she want. Okay, so we don't want.
Communication's hard, isn't it?
So you're moving, Councillor Heeman. We have a seconder in Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Okay, then that carries. All right. All right. I think it's worth noting too that when this document leaves the municipality here, it's going to be looked at, examined pretty thoroughly also by the county planning staff. And, you know, there could be some tweaks depending on what they look at, but this is the sum and substance of what we're sending through to the county. Okay, is there anything else?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through my list really quickly and then I'll let everyone else speak because I agree that I think we should have the commercial on the main floor. I respect flexibility, but if there's any, you know, I think it's in some ways it's easier to lose commercial zoning than it is to get it from the front. So I would like that to be an option. And, you know, as an owner of commercial apartment real estate, you know, I can change that zoning within certain restrictions. So I don't think that, you know, again, we talked about traffic as there not being a lack of amenities. If you have amenities, there's going to be less traffic. You know, it's not that simple, but, you know, kind of. So I think that it's common sense, you know, whatever that. So that's one point I think is relevant. The other point is I don't know if you guys have been to the Starbucks on Dundas Street in East London, but you can't turn into it unless you're coming from a certain direction. And you can only turn out of it. You can only turn into it going east, and you can only turn out onto Clark. So, and again, this was mentioned in terms of, you know, road design and turning lanes and things of that nature. And I just want to draw attention to, you know, the fact that you can have something called a left in, left out channelization island that would direct traffic onto a proposed route that would mitigate impacts on Christie Drive, right? And I don't think it would limit any of the design features that have been talked about otherwise. I think you can still have, you know, exiting to the south. So we have two different points of entry. So there's no emergency services risk. But I think this is a design solution that was brought forward by the community and, you know, I think is pretty reasonable. You know, like you put concrete there, it's going to direct people towards a certain way. And if they want to go absolutely another way, then you give them, you know, 30 seconds more disincentive to do that. Kind of balances out the weight. So I would like us to consider looking at a left in, left out channelization island with respect to was it block 173 or 170, the apartment blocks. But I'm not going to make a motion at this point in time. Those are the two things that I think would be appropriate amendments at this, but I'm going to leave it till a larger discussion.
Jeff? Go ahead.
So a couple of, we'll answer both those questions, and if we can keep up on the answers as we go, we don't have to keep track of them later. So on number one, Aaron and I have been whispering to each other here, but zoning's not on the floor tonight. But certainly the message to the developer that what you hope to see in the zoning in the future is very productive. It's constructive. So I think we're aware of that, and that's good. That's all we can really do with it tonight. The second point, I'm not sure if you're wanting to make a motion to change the plan or whatever, but I would caution against doing detailed traffic engineering on the floor of the council meeting. But I think that the specifications for what the municipality finds to be acceptable for traffic engineering will be set by the traffic book, and it's book 11 maybe, or I can't remember the book number that it is, but that detailed design that the municipality will insist on through the traffic design, depending on the use that's there, will dictate the prescribed engineering method that's implemented to keep it safe. And so that it's a bit premature, but I think it's raising it now so that we're aware of it as that detailed design occurs is very helpful, but I don't think we could possibly put that into a draft condition.
So keeping it in mind.
And that's why I didn't make a motion to that effect, but I think the point is that, if we are doing the safety study, that's a specific example of something that could be made a requirement. And this goes to my previous comment that this is not over tonight. This is an ongoing detailed discourse between all parties.
Councillor Crockett. Okay, who are we going with?
Sorry. I just wanted to echo Danielle's comments in regards to the Harry Small Trail and the significance that it has historically, and just the physical pathway itself. And I do want to just say that I wish Doug Terry showed the reference photo that we have seen at council of what the proposed trail would look like after the fact, because I think that the restoration of it will be quite beautiful, and even more accessible than it is now. But that leads into my question in regards to environment. I think that there's a somewhat unclear position in regards to the UTRCA's initial first comment of no objection, that kind of convolutes the conversation. So I was just wondering whether you could share any kind of outstanding considerations, or kind of how they will be involved in the process going forward.
Are you able to answer that, Erin? Okay, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. So certainly it is a little bit confusing where they say no objections. However, here's a list of things that we still want to see. I think, again, it comes back to the principle of, is this something that, can all of these things be addressed? So there's concerns about, the road extension through the wetland and connection to Harris Drive. So they have several conditions related to requiring of permits. All the detailed engineering that's required as part of that will be substantial before they give their section, whatever it is, permit. Yeah, section 28 permit. Thank you. And not only that, but they're taking into consideration all 31 of the environmental impact assessment recommendations. Those things need to be required, need to be implemented as a condition of approval as well. They will be reviewing the trails plan that is brought forward by the developers. They will be reviewing the wetland removal and compensation plan, any impacts on the natural hazard area, They have quite a list at the end of the draft plan conditions. There's quite a list of conditions that we need specific clearance from the conservation on. So when they say, you know, no objection, again, it's kind of in the tone of what we as staff are also saying is, you know, they have established the principle of development. However, all of these things can be addressed through conditions. And again, like Tom said, we have to give the developers some level of certainty that, you know, they're not wasting their time or their money or their energy. So that's sort of what the Conservation Authority is doing, as well as they're conditionalizing the requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were you finished, Councillor Crockett? Oh, for now, no. Okay.
But the
Councillor.
important thing is that their scope is strictly limited to flooding and natural hazard. It's not to do with uh, natural heritage anymore. So, and most of those things you can engineer, you know. And I believe that they have done that additional work to make sure that there isn't flooding risk, but that is pertaining to turning the stormwater ponds into in order to build a wetland, you have to replace it 3-to-1. So the stormwater ponds are going to be big enough to control the displacement that would otherwise go into the wetland. And in the previous submission, the deficiency was the velocity of the discharge, which has been resolved. And if you put weirs into a drainage channel, you can reduce the velocity of the impact. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just communicating some of the things that have taken a lot of time to understand that and further to that, the developers have indicated that they plan to put this infrastructure in front-loaded so that the natural features that are to be impacted, and likewise with the Harry Small Trail, that the parks and drainage and wetland features will be there initially, which is to mitigate the disruption as was mentioned earlier.
Jeff.
We're kind of tag teaming this, and this is good because through you, Mayor, to Councillor Heeman's point, I just want to mention that when the pre-con occurred for this, the Conservation Authority was still responsible for natural heritage. Of course, as the file has evolved, the way that those responsibilities didn't just fall off the table, they fell to the municipality, as you indicated, the natural heritage side of that. The consultant, the developer hired their own consultant, and then we had Stan Tech do the peer review, which in the past would have been done by the Conservation Authority, and now is done by our own, by Stan Tech's professional biologist and ecologist that did that peer review. So that those natural heritage responsibilities remain, and they were addressed in that way. And I wanted to add that the conservation authorities also, their comments also reflect their role here as a landowner because of the Scheme 43 lands that they own around the mill pond. So comments, for example, that they'll provide in the trail are comments that they're providing to protect their interests as the owner of that land with a management agreement with us. So it is a bit, that's kind of explains the extent of their comments. They're commenting on some areas they normally wouldn't, but in this case, they own the land there, or a chunk of the public land there.
Okay. Just at this point, Tracy, do you happen to have that picture of the revised Harry Small Trail that you shared with us? If you have it, if you could put it up on the screen through Sarah. Oh, right. Yeah, that might not be possible.
Think it's on the municipal website in our last comment
Okay.
response.
Okay. All right then. Yeah, it might solve a few of the questions that members of the public have. All right, so turning to council again, Councillor Lockie.
Yeah, through your worship, I would still like to circle back on density. I would like to recommend that council recommends a 50 units per hectare, which is consistent with OPA 27. Because yeah, obviously density is a huge concern. 95 units per hectare is well beyond the scope. So that's what I will propose that we, yeah.
So taking it from 95 currently
To 50.
proposed to 50. So a reduction of 45 units. Pardon? Yes, Jeff, please.
So through you, Mayor, and I take it it's a question leading to presumably perhaps a motion. Just to discuss it first, the 95 is the report that's been written by Aaron as the professional planner in the file. The 95 is meeting provincial policy and the public interest, which is the ultimate test for this application. And so as the planners for the municipality, we're recommending the 95 because that's what was applied for. If the question is to the applicant about could they live with less, I think that question can best be answered by the applicant and not us, but we're prepared to recommend 95.
Would you like to speak to that, Tracy?
Through you, Mayor. I mean, we can look at the possibility of lowering it, but I don't think we can go down to the 50. We based ours based on the like the R3 zone, which is the zone that permits apartments, and the minimum lot areas that are required for units there. So we calculated out how many units we could get based on the lot areas that we currently have. So the section 11.31A of the zoning bylaw permits requires a minimum lot area per dwelling unit. For the first 4 units is 250 square meters, and then 100 square meters of land for each unit thereafter, which is how we calculated it out to get the 95 units per hectare.
All right. Okay, I think Sarah's found the Harry Small Trail picture. You could put that up, Sarah. So that everyone is aware, this is a concept of the Harry Small Trail being moved a little to the north, right? And so to allow the road access along the current trail, Christie Drive, with these types of features that they will be an attractive thing for birds and wildlife, and plus it's a nice walking environment. I'm losing my voice here. Anyway, thank you. I thought that would be beneficial for the public to have a look at that. Councillor Heeman?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and I know it's a nice picture, but it's a picture. And so if anyone has any of if anyone's not, needs to see it to believe it like me, because I'm up in Thorndale, we got to see it to believe it. You go down to Highbury, you can see some of the parks that have had the naturalization. In some cases it's similar, in some cases it's better, and my understanding is that they do have qualified third-party people who are capable of doing this work. Nothing replaces thousands of years of nature, but studies have shown that in order to reverse environmental damage, if people don't take an active role, then we're not going to be able to correct the damage that has happened in the past. So I don't think it's perfect, but I think that, if this was someone who hadn't had a track record saying this and giving us a picture, it wouldn't mean as much as someone who has demonstrated that across multiple developments. It doesn't change everybody's personal connections and experiences with the Harry Small Trail and with the Mill Pond area. But I think that's the sentiment that the mayor was trying to communicate by requesting that image.
Thanks, Councillor Heeman. Councillor Crockett?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna bring it back to the density conversation that we were having, a lovely concept photo that was shared. I too remain somewhat apprehensive about the proposed 95 units per hectare. I did a rough calculation of the existing apartment stock, I'll call it, in Dorchester. And to my knowledge, there's likely fewer, probably quite a bit fewer than 300 comparable units right now, which includes Dorchester Terrace. And so I think the proposed scale just seems aggressive when you look at what's available now. And so I was wondering whether the planner could expand on kind of the context of what units per hectare is and what that would look like in a kind of a grander scheme of things.
Sure, through the mayor to Councillor Crockett. So certainly, if you've done the calculations and, if your understanding is that we have that number of units currently, the proposal does seem, more than that for sure. However, in this circumstance too, I would note that there is a number of other lot provisions and things of that nature that have to be taken into consideration. This isn't, this is taking the number of units, the size requirement under the proposed zoning over the entirety of the block. However, there's other considerations to be made. There's landscaping, lot coverage, parking requirements, setbacks, stormwater management, all of these different things that will also ultimately impact the number of units that can be presented on that lot. Especially, if we're considering commercial on the ground floor and we have a height restriction of four stories, that limits them to the 3 stories basically above the ground floor commercial. So although the density, the 95 units per hectare, does seem significant and certainly significantly more than what we're used to, it is something that will have to be accommodated in a good way. They will also be subject to site plan control for the block, at which time we will address a lot of these types of considerations as well.
And then just further to Aaron's point, we will be addressing zoning matters at the next stage of this application. So this is not necessarily something that we have to put carved in stone right here at the meeting tonight, but it's definitely something we can keep in our mind. I think we also have to consider housing stock and waiting lists for apartment buildings that are currently here, which is, from my own background, I know it's pretty significant. So anyway, Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Great, thank you. I think we've had a really good discussion in terms of the development and addressing concerns that were raised either by the public or by members of council. I do believe that staff have done a good job of addressing those concerns through way of the conditions that have been appended to the report. And if there's no further questions, I would like to move the motion to recommend the staff report. I know that there's 4 there, so it's to recommend the issuance of the draft plan approval to the county and to adopt official plan amendment 0325, and that the implementing bylaw be considered as included in the bylaw portion of the agenda, and that the application for zoning bylaw amendment be brought back to Thames Center for Council for consideration of approval upon granting of the draft plan of subdivision.
And for everyone's reference, if you haven't got a printed agenda, it is on the screen. All right, so we have the motion is moved by Deputy Mayor Smybert. Is there a seconder? No one to second the motion? Then it fails. Certainly.
I just want a point of clarification that if that failed, the changes have to be made here. I just not sure we were totally done discussions before. Okay,
Further discussion? Deputy Mayor Smyberg?
I, I see where Councillor Crockett's going with this. I think, are you saying you're not prepared to make a decision at this point in time? I think, do you still have some more questions that need to be answered?
I think just circling back on the conversation about the OPA amendment in regards to density, I'm just not sure if I'm like I understand where the number of the 95 units per hectare is coming from, and I know that they're by way of site plan and other considerations in that area. I'm just not sure if I'm comfortable moving that right now, but I am in agreement that I'm on board with the recommendation going to county in regards to the application for draft plan approval. But I assume that they maybe go hand in hand the way that this is written, or can they be?
Through the mayor, they can be separate motions. A motion for endorsement of this plan of subdivision and, you know, whatever else other decision you would like to make on the official plan amendment.
Yeah, and just like we can still vote on that. It didn't actually get as a point of order. That's not defeated. It just didn't come to the floor, correct?
There's no seconder, so it didn't come to the floor.
Yeah, so you don't need 2/3 to overturn a decision that wasn't made. So, yeah, and I think like it is important that we have reference to our official plans. I think when you look at the PPS, there is a request of us to prioritize high density and housing stock, but there are no specific mandates or targets, right? So I think that's an evolving case precedent. But I think it does behoove us to have that conversation, whether that is through zoning or site plan or what not. But reality is the site plan doesn't come to council, doesn't come to the public. It's not a public meeting, you know. And a part of this is giving certainty to our developer applicant, and it's giving certainty to our community. And so I think that's a little bit of the exercise that we find ourselves in. And so that's why I think it is worth discussing. And you know, I'm also flexible in the terms that, yeah, if you sacrifice a floor for commercial, then I think that there should be some accommodation otherwise, you know. And then again, if there are clear efforts to mitigate traffic and segment traffic, then you know the concerns that have been expressed can be addressed. And this is all about what's the happy medium, which, you know, a good agreement is everybody's a little dissatisfied. You know, I'm not happy. Is everyone happy right now? So I think it's worth the discussion. And
Thanks, Councillor Heyman. All right, where do we want to take this from now? Here, Jeff, do you want to enter the fray?
Well, I'll just provide some more structure to help you with the decision, perhaps through the mayor into the questions. The complexity with these applications is often that the site plan gets developed first, and the proposal with the parking and how wide the fire lane is and where it is often comes first, and it's really the thing that comes last. And when you have a public meeting like this, the debate is often dominated by the conversation of specific design. This one is coming in the more, I think what the Planning Act expects is you get the official plan in first, and then you do the design. And it's absolutely acknowledged that the site plans don't come back to council. That's one of the amendments that the province has made to streamline, but the zoning would have to come back to council. And so it's a bit and again, I'm going to reiterate it, that planning staff reviewed the application on the basis of what was requested, and it meets the provincial policy, and it meets the, what we believe to be the public interest for the site. But we understand that if the first floor is commercial and there's only 3 more floors, likely 95 is not going to happen. But that level of detailed design hasn't occurred yet. So if you want to reduce from the 95, I think your best input on how much to reduce comes from the developer to say what's a more realistic number. But I have to say, at the end of the day, until the detailed design is done, size of the apartments, the layout of the building, the parking layout, that 95 is probably much higher than is needed, but certainly it's going to be difficult to drop it down to some number. And there will be another public process. And I'm not certain if that design would be ready at the time when that public process occurs. But to put an arbitrary number on it through this process, I think is a bit premature, but it certainly council's within council's prerogative.
Councillor Heeman?
Worship, just by way of throwing things out there, because again, this is going to the county. Can we just recommend that we act in conformity with the Thames Center's official plan and with the county's official plan with respect to density targets? And we can leave that up to, I think it expresses the sentiment that's being heard and echoed by council. And I think it leaves it open towards flexibility and for that secondary process to occur.
Jeff, you want to take this one?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to the question, I think that it doesn't respond to the application you have in front of you. They've applied for the 95. That's the application you have in front of you. And I think, you could, with the consent of the applicant, come up with some amendment here on the floor, defer the decision, or you could approve it the way that it's been applied for and deal with it through zoning. I think obviously the staff are recommending that second approach, that you approve it the way that it is. We can recommend it the way it is. That's why you have the recommendation in front of you. And then you do have zoning to be more precise about the detail of the site. So unless the applicant can provide you some number less than 95, I think you've got the 95 before you. That's what the application's for, Councillor Heeman. That's the difficulty. They applied for that.
So for Doug Terry Holmes, are you amenable to a 5-minute break while we just decide which way we're going here? Or would you like to
We're
comment back?
amenable to a break through you, your worship. We do have a couple comments perhaps on the 95, maybe for a little moment.
Okay, if you want to put
Check.
your heads together and come back in about 5 minutes? Does that work?
Well, I
Or
can provide them right
you
now.
can provide them right now? Okay.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of just reiterate, like there's 7 years of thought into the density request through the OPA. It wasn't just something that we collectively pulled out of a hat. For a little bit of scale, for other neighboring municipalities, the city of St. Thomas, their kind of standard R5 block or their R5 zoning for high density goes all the way up to 250 units a hectare. So that's kind of, and the city of London would be similar, acknowledging that Thames Center isn't the city of London or the city of St. Thomas, but that's kind of the one end of the scale. Most municipalities use for the definition transition between medium density and high density, that's somewhere around 75 units a hectare. It does vary from township to township or municipality to municipality. So cutting it much lower than what we're at isn't even really a high density project truly anymore. cutting the built form from 6 stories to 4 stories was something that was a reaction to all of the public concerns and comments that we did get, and those of council as well. But what a 4-story building with adequate parking, adequate landscaping, adequate wetland buffering, kind of a fully built out, self-contained site that gets you somewhere around 100 units a hectare in built form from our experience on similar projects. So if you allow up to a 4-story building, but cap the density at 50 units a hectare, you're effectively missing half of the potential of that block. And to be honest, you might as well not even have it. Like you're not making efficient use of the land. You're not meeting staff's recommendations. You're not meeting your own density targets to cut it down to the 50. Tracy earlier explained the logic using the municipality's own R3 zoning, kind of extrapolating the math on the per unit area on how that 95 was derived at. So that is a number that has thought put into it. Like I said, it wasn't just something out of the hat. And we do believe that meets the intent of the municipality zoning. There's a little bit of contradiction within the OP and zoning bylaw, speaking to whether density is regulated by the OP or by zoning. So we worked with staff and thought it was better to ask for it now. But I guess to kind of conclude, and back to your comment, Councillor Lockie, right at the start, like 50 kills the project. Like it's not a high density project anymore. You can't build an apartment building. Like it's just not a good way to use that land. So we would like to keep it at 95 for council's consideration.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from Doug Terry Holmes while we're on it? Nope. All good? Okay. Councillor Heyman.
I'm just wondering, like, do we know so again, Hawthorne Park is similar, and there's been examples about how that has good transition and phasing of densities and good commercial and residential mix. Do we know what the density target is for those proposed 4 stories?
We don't, through the mayor, to Councillor Heeman, we could try to look it up at the break, but we don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, and Aaron doesn't know the answer, so I'm not sure how readily available it is.
It was indicated in the plan, but I'm not 100% sure there's a definite commitment going forward. So that's the little wrinkle in that one.
Yeah, because through you, your worship, I tried to look it up and I couldn't, because we didn't approve what they submitted for.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's why I don't know what the final density target would be. And again, it's relevant to benchmark things.
Okay.
I can add, and I'd like to add to the mayor, if you don't mind. We in looking at the OP policy, the 50 per hectare is a surprisingly low number. And of course, the OP has just been through the update, and it was something that we, in talking about it as a planning group in the department, that 50 is not high density. And it does become problematic to balance the protection of agricultural land with the maximization of the development of the land that you do have in your urban growth boundaries now. If you're going to cap it at 50, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth, frankly. And so the 50 number in the OP seems low. I think that this is all hard to kind of grasp without seeing how the 95 or some number slightly less than 95 would manifest on the site. That really relies on good planning principles, good site design, because frankly, 95 done well would be way better than 50 done poorly. And that detailed design, we're not at that detailed design stage yet. So I just lay that out there as context that I am concerned about dropping off the 95 because I think you're missing other elements of the provincial policy statement that compel us to make wise use of the land that we have designated and zoned for many years before we start to sprawl. So I just will leave you with that. And that's part of the reason for the staff recommendation.
And I welcome those comments, and I will add one of my own, and that is something that we've alluded to before. There is a definite lack of residential tenanted properties in Dorchester. Apartment buildings have been asked for in the past, and we haven't received them. And although we are looking at this at a certain point in time, I know that going down the road, there could be a case where apartments of 95 or something closer to that number would be beneficial for the community going forward, because our average, according to the most recent demographic information that I have, is 64 years. And that doesn't even take into consideration, as Michelle was saying earlier, about our kids moving back into the village. So I think we have to, I think we have to look at it here, but we also have to have a view down the road as well. All right, so are we completed? No?
Just through your worship, if we could take that recess to get what our the information that was requested, because I appreciate the comments made, but this is about, this is an official plan amendment. We have an official plan because it informs our decisions with robust context, and I feel like lacking that context, we don't have, you know, how are we qualifying this decision? Because again, we have stuff approved that hasn't been built, and we do have substantial housing stock to be built. And I just think we have to be fair to the development community and being acting consistently when we do official plan amendments. Otherwise, we are acting on, we have creep in terms of scope, and then it's not a plan.
All right, so if I understand you correctly, you want to take a break to find out the density in the Hawthorne subdivision for the multi-residential building. Is that right? Yep. Does that work with staff? Okay, how much time do you need? 10 minutes? Okay. All right. So the time is 6:42. So at 6:52 back in the chambers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 6:52 and I'm calling this meeting back to order. So, are there any other questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that opportunity to have a little side room conversations and a break and kind of just refocus on this. I think because this is something that's new to us, we wanted to really make sure we had an understanding of where this 95 per unit per hectare came from. And in those discussions, I think that there's relevance to it in the understanding of what a unit size would look like, what the shape of the building would look like, what commercial and other amenities can be added in at that scale, and what that would look like either through affordability, attainability for residents. So that's just kind of, it was some good background information for me to have an understanding of kind of what 95 per unit hectare looks like in real life conception once they start doing the planning there. And then I guess I was just gonna say, I believe the ladies found the number in regards to Hawthorne Heights. So I'll just ask them to share that before we move forward.
Okay, Erin, you have that number? Go ahead.
I do. It's actually built in right into their zoning, so it's quite convenient. So there's several R3 blocks or like higher density blocks. They range from 35 to 74, and the highest is 80 units per hectare.
Thank you. All right, council, are we ready to proceed or is there anything else? Councillor Crockett.
Sorry, a follow-up question to the way that Aaron just worded that. If their units per hectare were based on zoning, can this discussion continue in a zoning conversation?
So it's a little bit confusing because we have two official plans. So the in effect official plan does stipulate a density of 35 units per hectare. So under that policy framework, an OPA would be required. Under the OPA 27, if that were to be in effect, there's sort of two conflicting, and that's sort of what they were alluding to previously, is there's two different policy statements. One of them says it shall be limited to about 20 to 50 units per hectare. And then there is this a policy that speaks to density shall be set in the zoning bylaw. So under the current official plan that we have, they do require an OPA. But we can, yes. Sorry?
You can further regulate it if you want to when you get to the zoning. That's the question. Can she further regulate it when she gets to the zoning? When we deal with the zoning bylaw?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
So I think just to be, I think then I'd put it on the floor that I think it gives you a way to kind of pick at it. I think if you approve the density at 95, but the zoning application comes in with the additional information that supports the zoning, you would obviously have the ability to say, we're capping the zoning for this block at 70 or 75 or whatever, which at the point where this development gets to, where all of these factors are in front of you, it's a more logical choice to put a cap on it then.
yeah, and I think that makes sense. Okay, so is there anything else from council before we move? All right, ready to make a motion? Are you? Deputy Mayor, are you?
Well, I tried before. I will try again. Hopefully the response from the planner has alleviated maybe some concerns with respect to the density. So let me move the staff recommendation, and that is that the Council for the Municipality of Thames Center recommends the issuance of draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex in regard to application for plan of subdivision and subject to the conditions as amended, or we amended that one condition, and that the application for official plan amendment 0325 requested by Doug Terry Limited for 83 Christie Drive and 2648 Harris Road be adopted and forwarded to the county for consideration and approval, and that the implementing bylaw be considered as included in the bylaw portion of the agenda, and that the application for zoning bylaw amendment be brought back to Thames Centre Council for consideration of approval upon the granting of the draft plan subdivision and the approval of the official plan amendment, both by the County of Middlesex.
All right, thanks, Deputy Mayor. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Lockie, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, thank you. Thank you to Doug Terry Holmes. At this time, another matter we need to deal with in closed session. So I'm going to get my script. Oh, Councillor Heeman?
Thank you, Your Worship. So with respect to the petition that we received, with requests for the ongoing traffic safety study, that's why the specific amendment was requested. But I don't think we should be waiting on Doug Terry to make sure our streets are safe. So I have the following motion, which is to do a traffic impact study on Wheeler Ave and Hamilton Road and Christie Drive and Mill Road areas of the Tyner Estates subdivision to identify traffic calming opportunities and provide a report on results and recommendations, and to please consult with the County of Middlesex as well with respect to Hamilton Road.
Is this directed to staff? Tom? Or, yeah, Nick, I'm not clear.
So I'm speaking to business on the agenda, which was the comments received by the community petition. So right, like
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Tom, for raising that. I was wondering if we could actually expand on your thoughts there and include a addition for parking around the mill pond, which is a discussion that we've already had. And I'm wondering if we can roll that all together into a motion being brought forward at the next meeting, since it's going to be towards Thames Center staff.
okay.
You're fine with that? So
Yeah.
that's a friendly amendment? To that.
I'm gonna defer to the clerk in terms of the order point, like the order of this.
All right.
So we can take your motion and make a friendly, like I can work with the two of you and have it on the next agenda if you're comfortable with that. And then direction to staff to bring this forward. And then it can be voted on at that point in time if you're comfortable. That's what you would like, and it's up to you whether you would like that or
Okay,
not.
so we'll do it as a notice of motion,
Yep.
and then I'll read it in at the appropriate time. But I wanted our guests here.
Yep.
To hear that.
You can do that now, and we can I will have it on next week's council. So you don't have to read it again. That's what I'm letting you know. I'll just have it on the
Got it.
15th. It'll come back to you on 15th.
Okay, and just confirming for the public record, you're fine with that then, Councillor Crockett. Okay, all right then. So at this point then, we will move to to closed session. We have someone here waiting for us to finish. So at this time, a mover and a seconder that the public meeting adjourn no, I'm sorry, that number 17. I pulled up the wrong one. Okay. Council will be moving into closed session for which there will be no live streaming. The live stream will resume once the closed session portion has been completed. So the motion is that council adjourn to closed session at 7:01 PM pursuant to section 239(2)B and E of the Municipal Act in order for council to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual including municipal or local board employees, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. So a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Smigert and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay, thanks very much. And thank you to everyone for your attendance here tonight. Thanks to Doug Terry Home staff. Oh, that was interesting.
Welcome back, everyone. I did want to mention that unfortunately, Mayor McMillan has left the meeting. She was not feeling very well, so I am presiding as chair. So just during closed session, a council considered one item regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and three separate items regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and provided direction to staff in all cases. And that brings us to item 8, public meeting for planning purposes. So I need a motion to adjourn our regular meeting at 7:42 and move into public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act to consider applications that are listed on the agenda. Councillor DeVoe and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? Sorry, Councillor Lockie. All in favor? That is carried. Okay. So the first item is 8.1. That's the zoning bylaw amendment application Z 526 at 3994 Hamilton Road, County Road 29. And I'm going to have the planner provide an overview of the application, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you. So the report was circulated in the agenda package. Given the time, I'll ask if there are any questions. I am recommending approval. If you'd like me to cover any sections or present as usual, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We've all had a chance to read that, so I appreciate that. Is the applicant? Nope. Okay. Members of council, do we have any questions at all? Okay. And then if not, then is there a motion? I know that staff had provided a recommendation, but how does council want to proceed? Councillor Crockett, are you moving that the staff recommendation be approved? And the staff recommendation is actually on the screen by the, yes, neither do I. Okay, and then seconded by Councillor Lockie. All right, any questions, comments? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is 8.2, and that's a zoning bylaw amendment application Z 626 for the north side of Queen Street, east of Elizabeth Street in Dorchester. And I will have the planner provide an overview.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you. So same as before, the report was circulated and is in the agenda package. So I'll ask if there are any questions. I would like to note after the writing of the report, we did receive some comments. So comments were also received from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, noting that the lands are not affected by any regulations pursuant to Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, and that the UTRCA has no objections to the application. Also, the tax collector noted property taxes are current, and ExxonMobil noted there is no active imperial infrastructure in the vicinity. So I'll ask if there's any questions. I am recommending approval. And again, if you'd like me to cover any sections or present as usual, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you for that that overview. Again, we saw the we've had a chance to read the report, so no need to go over that. Do we have the applicant online or in the room? Okay. We don't have any public members, so I will just look to council to see if you have any comments or questions. Yep, Councilor Crockett.
I just wanted to say that I think that this is a excellent use of the space in this area. So with that, I'm happy to move the recommended motion appended.
Thank you, Councilor Crockett, and then second by Councilor Heeman. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you to approve the app. Okay, so I now need a motion to close public meetings at 7:45 p.m. and reconvene our regular meeting. Moved by Councilor Crockett, second by Councilor Lockie. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, item 9 is approval of the previous minutes, and that was at our regular meeting of council held on May the 11th. Councilor Crockett moves, Councilor Lockie seconded. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, which brings us to item 10, the consent agenda. Are there any motions you want to pull? Councillor Lucky?
Yep, through the deputy mayor, I'd like to pull 10.4, make a brief comment. Shall I go ahead now?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to mention there was some discussion on the road work. So obviously it touched on the Catherine Street road work that we'll be having. And I was wondering if Director Craven would be able to make a comment on it.
Sure, through your deputy mayor. It's Catherine Street sidewalk reconstruction or construction project is on the agenda tonight here. Consists of probably about 1,100 meters of sidewalk that connects Dorchester Village to the entire Porter subdivision. We're excited about that, and construction, if approved, will start this summer here.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other items to be pulled from the consent agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to receive items 10.1 through 10.11 for information. Councillor Lockie is moving that. Councillor Heeman has seconded. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, and then we move to reports of departments. And the first one is the Thorndale Lions Community Center funding update. And our treasurer will be presenting that report.
Through the chair, the purpose of this report is to provide council and the public with an overview of the remaining uncommitted Thorndale Lions Community Center donation balance, which has currently been held in deferred revenue, and to recommend the creation of a dedicated reserve to improve transparency, accountability, and future tracking of these funds. It is my plan to present reserve balances through the budget process. So by moving this to reserve, it just adds more transparency for everybody involved. So any questions, please let me know.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the Director of Finance?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for undertaking this project, and I think it resolves a point of contention that I think was unnecessarily complicated, and appreciate these steps to clarify it and the greater transparency.
Thank you. So just looking for a motion to receive the report and that council direct staff to establish a Thorndale Lions Community Center reserve and transfer the remaining deferred revenue balance related to the Thorndale Lions Community Center donations into the reserve for future eligible capital improvements and initiatives. Councillor Heeman, you moving that? Can I get a seconder? Councillor Lockie, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next staff report is the Dorchester Road Drain and Sidewalk Construction RFT Award.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Report PW 01626, Dorchester Road Drain and Sidewalk Construction Award. This report recommends awarding the Dorchester Road Drain and Sidewalk Construction contract to Cassidy Construction Limited, London. The lowest compliant bidder at $1,119,001.71, including HST. The project will install a 1 in 10-year storm municipal drain outlet for surrounding developments and complete sidewalks to connect Boardwalk subdivision to Dorchester's pedestrian network, addressing inadequate storm capacity and filling sidewalk gaps to improve safety, accessibility, and active travel. Project cost of $1,007,696 will be funded using the municipal drain maintenance operating budget and the transportation reserves, as well as the benefiting property owners outlined in Schedule C assessment in the municipal drain report. The section of roadway was identified in the draft Thames Center Trail and Cycling Master Plan update as a, quote, proposed improvement area for sidewalks. If you have any questions, I can happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Craven. Any questions? Councillor Crockett?
I have a three-part question that you can answer all at once. I was just happy to see that this project is underway. So I was wondering if you had an estimated timeline for completion, whether you can confirm what side of the road the sidewalk will be on, and if it's on the far side of Boardwalk. I'm not figuring out what direction that is right now. Is it too early to begin discussing crosswalk options with the county?
through you, Deputy Mayor. Projected completion date is, I think, the first week in September of this year. There may be some overruns, I guess, next year, like sodding, topsoil, seeding, whatnot, that may run into next spring, and possibly sidewalk, like actual concrete sidewalks. We let it, give some time to settle and whatnot too. But the majority of the project should be done by this fall here of this year. Second question, again, the sidewalk will be just on the west side of Dorchester Road. You mentioned about the east side Dorchester Road. That'll be part of the Hawthorne subdivision. That sidewalk was part of their plan and whatnot, and that'll be their timeline when that gets installed. Part 3, I think, was a crosswalk. And speaking with the county, Chris Trainey, the engineer, he mentioned too, let's wait to see what Hawthorne Phase 1 looks like. We'll get some pedestrian activity to see, to trigger some studies and whatnot, just to see when that crosswalk should be going in.
Thank you, Director Craven. Any other questions or comments? Okay, there is a staff recommendation. What do council like to do? Councillor Crockett, are you the staff recommendation to award the tender to Cassidy Construction? Okay, seconder, Councillor Lucky, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is the Catherine Street water main replacement, sidewalk installation and storm sewer reconstruction. Councillor, or sorry, Dr. Craven.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Report PW 01726, Catherine Street Water Main Replacement, Sidewalk Installation, and Storm Sewer Reconstruction Award. This report recommends awarding Catherine Street Water Main Replacement, Sidewalk Installation, and Storm Sewer Reconstruction contract to JR Civil Infrastructures Limited for $4,733,804.08, excluding HST. The work includes upsizing and replacing the water main from Shaw Road to St. David's Catholic School, adding north side sidewalks and adjacent storm sewers to connect to Northdale Public School, and upsizing the south side storm sewer to the outlet near 3581 Catherine Street. 2 bids were received, and JR was the lowest compliant bidder. A capital increase of $1,079,249, including a $300,000 contingency, is requested to cover higher award cost and additional geotechnical, engineering, culvert, and retaining wall needs. While the award exceeds the original budget, the safety and accessibility gains from completing the north side sidewalks far outweigh the additional cost. Investing $1,079,000 now prevents ongoing risk to children and residents, reducing future liability and operating costs from piecemealing improvements and delivering long-term community value that justify the overrun. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Craven. Yes, Councillor Heeman.
So I just want to pick up on Councillor Crockett's comment with respect to his sidewalk, because I think this provides greater connectivity to that Catherine Street corridor, and where we do have a traffic impact study for Richmond and Catherine Street. So that is ongoing. So it's been my experience, you get one at a time.
Thank you, Councillor Heeman. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lucky.
Yeah, through you, Director Sharp. Do we know how the overage will be funded?
Yeah, so the overage, so we have, this is funded from 3 different kind of capital projects. We have a water portion, a storm portion, and transportation. So for water, we're funding from development charges as well as the rate supported water reserve. For the storm portion, we're using the stormwater reserve, as well as there's a bit of capacity left in our Canada Community Building Fund funding that we have. So that can pick up a little bit of it. And then from the transportation side, we're using the Transportation Services Capital Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Councillor Heeman.
Just to follow up on that, so we didn't use the stormwater fund for any of these, or like the stormwater fees Am I correct? Because those are they were already pre-allocated.
So part
Or
of the
part-
stormwater budget, there's a contribution that goes into the stormwater reserve. That reserve is being used to fund a portion of this project and some of the stormwater portion. Unfortunately, there's not enough capacity in those reserves yet to fund their whole portion. So that's why we're recommending using some of the grant funding through CCPF.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. There is a staff recommendation for consideration. What would council like to do? Councillor Crockett,
I'll move the recommended motion before us.
and that's to receive the report and approve the awarding of the Catherine Street Water Main Replacement Sidewalk Installation and Storm Sewer Reconstruction Project to JR and the cost of $4.7 million excluding HST, and that the financing for this project be approved as set out in sources of financing report attached hereto as Appendix A, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute an agreement with JR Civil Infrastructures Limited for the work contained in the tender documents. You seconding it there, Councillor Lucky? Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. I need a motion to extend curfew, please. Councillor Heeman and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is 12 reports of committees. So items listed under reports of committees are approved by council in one motion. Council members may request that one or more items be separated for further action. What would council like to do? Councillor Lucky? Approved. Councillor Lucky is approving that. Second, Councillor Crockett, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, no unfinished business. Notice of motion we had dealt with earlier in the evening with Councillor Heeman, and that will be listed on the next agenda at the next meeting. Any new business? Okay, bylaws. So we have bylaws 43/2026 through 45/2026. And we are looking at those reading a first, second, and third time and being adopted. And, sorry, that bylaw 46/26 be given first and second reading only. Can I get a mover, please?
You need to, since we made amendments. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lockie, you're moving it? Councillor Heeman, seconding it? All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Thank you. And that brings us to item number 19, the confirmatory bylaw. If I can get a mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Lockie and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. In terms of the meeting schedule, our next meeting is Monday, June the 15th at 5 o'clock, followed by Monday, June 29th at 5 o'clock. So that brings us to adjournment. If I can get a mover, please. Councillor Lockie and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? And we're